Welcome to my Eastern Conference Finals preview of the matchup between the Celtics and the Heat. Now, before I get into what I think is going to happen in this series, let's go into the head-to-head games that happened this year. Now, the Celtics, they've won 2 out of 3 of them, but I will add that the Heat at the time did not have Andre Iguodala or Jae Crowder. For the 2 games that the Celtics won, they won by 5 and 4 respectively, and the Heat won the one in August during the seeding games by 1. And Jae Crowder, he played 28 minutes, and Andre Iguodala played 30 minutes in that game. Well, both did not score a lot in that game on the offensive end, or didn't have really that much of an impact on the offensive end. I mean, Iguodala had 8 rebounds and 4 assists and 6 points, and Jae Crowder had 4 rebounds and 8 points. But they were able to guard the defensive wings for the Celtics very well, where Tatum had 23, which, again, is like, I get it, you scored 20 points, but you want to limit them in some capacity. Jaylen Brown had 18, and Hayward had 15. Now, that's what you kind of want. You don't want them, I mean, obviously, you don't want them to score, like, at all, but, like, you kind of want them to make sure, instead of getting them 30, they would get 20. That's what you kind of want. Now let's go into my big question of this series. When will Gordon Hayward return? Now, his 4-week timetable that was set when he initially got this injury ends the day of the game. But it is still unclear whether he plays or not. And this is very key because, obviously, Gordon Hayward is a really good player. But the Celtics' depth is a little bit shaky. After Robert Williams, it kind of goes a little bit sour on the bench. I don't really trust Brad Wanamaker a lot, or Semi Ojeleye. I mean, they've tried Grant Williams. He played 9 minutes in a couple games of the Raptors series, but I don't really trust anyone on the bench of the Celtics besides Robert Williams to produce on offense. I mean, Brad Wanamaker, he's fine as like an 8th guy, but I don't want him as my 7th guy on a playoff rotation. I kind of want him to just, play good defense and just make open threes on the offensive end. Now, my next question is, can Kemba Walker recover from his bad shooting series against the Raptors? Now, in the Raptors series, he shot 1 of 7 on Game 7, 1 of 6 in Game 6, 1 of 6 in Game 5, 1 of 6 in Game 4, 4 of 7, he actually shot really well in Game 3, 1 of 8 in Game 2, and 4 of 7 in Game 1. Now, if you look at that, he's only shot really, really well, in only Game 1 and Game 3. Now, that's a huge concern for him. I mean, it's also a concern overall how he's shooting. I mean, he struggled a lot. Only had 14 points in Game 7 and 5 points in Game 6. So if he can recover that would be huge. Now, I think one of the advantages Miami has is that they have just, as I've stated multiple times, they have 10 guys that they play. They have 10 or 9 guys that they can play in a rotation, which is very huge for them. And it's going to be less impactful just because, less impactful than the last series against the Bucks because the Bucks played at a really extreme pace. But it's still going to be really impactful, and especially because the Celtics have a weak bench. Now, this series is going to be really interesting from a matchup perspective. You're going to have Jimmy Butler on Kemba Walker at times. You're going to have Jae Crowder on Jason Tatum at times. You're going to have Andre Iguodala on Jaylen Brown at times. You're going to have Daniel Theis, who's had a really good defensive postseason and who's really underrated as a defensive player overall, guarding Bam sometime. Or guarding Bam is going to be his primary matchup against Bam Adebayo. So it's going to be a really interesting perspective from a matchup perspective, because it's going to be a really good series because these teams, they're both able to match either team very well. And that's going to be really interesting to see. Everyone seems to be talking about the 3-point, or I guess the matchup between the Heat's 3-point offensive firepower and the Celtics 3-point defensive firepower. Now, for reference, the Celtics are second defensively when it comes against defending the 3 with 34%. And the Heat are ranked second in shooting the three with 37% from the field in the regular season. Now, this is going to be really interesting for a lot of reasons. Why? Because you got a lot of shooters on the Heat side. You got people like Jay Crowder, 40% shooter. Tyler Hero, 40% shooter. You can't forget about Duncan Robinson. He's obviously he's not Steph Curry, but like he's the next. I don't want to compare him to Steph Curry here, but like I don't want to lose my momentum. He's a really, really good three-point shooter. Let me put it like that. He is 39% from the three. Goran Dragic, he's 38% from the three. And it goes on and on. This Heat team's really good at shooting the three. The Celtics, on the other hand, they got great perimeter defenders. You got people like Marcus Smart. You got people like Jason Tatum. You got people like Jaylen Brown. You got people like Kemba Walker. This team is really good at defending the perimeter. And that's going to be something that is going to be really interesting to see. I just didn't want to mention it without, I didn't want to say it was my own original idea, but in all the previews that I'm reading, that's going to be one of the huge things in this series. Now, this series was very tough to pick. I am going to go with the Heat in 7. Honestly, it's going to be really fun to watch, and I don't know exactly who's going to win. I'm not completely sure who's going to win this series, but it's going to be really interesting to see. And if I had to choose a team to win this series, it would be the Heat in 7.